Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Blue Cease. I'm the Executive Director of the Rochester Contemporary Art Center. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to tonight's talk with Cynthia Hawkins, presented in association with our exhibition, Hawkins Gonzalez. Those of you who are not from our region, ROCO is located in Rochester, New York, and which, of course, is Haudenosaunee territory, more specifically the Seneca Nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So in addition to acknowledging the land and the history, I really want to be sure that we are amplifying the many voices and the many ways in which Native arts and culture thrives in our area today. So first and foremost, I want to encourage anyone who's on the call today to visit our peer organization, Ganondagan, and learn about and support contemporary Native artists in our region. And also watch for the forthcoming exhibition of the recent work by R.G. Miller, who is a survivor of the Canadian residential schools. Those of you who are new to our organization, ROCO was founded in 1977, and we have a long history of supporting artists who are addressing important social and political issues through their work. We elevate underrepresented artists from our community, and we bring new artists to Rochester for the first time. And right now, our suite of exhibitions is representative of that mission, including David Cole's Rock Stars. And David will give a talk at ROCO live on April 19th. Built Environments, Forging Worlds Through Video Art in partnership with Alfred University's Institute for Electronic Art, for which we will host another artist panel on April 10th. And outdoors, our public art installation by Rafael Rodriguez, Shamar Brown, and Rudy Faber. And lastly, for all the artists who are here today, upcoming, our annual 6x6 exhibition is fast approaching. Entries are due April 6th or postmarked by April 8th. As many of you on the call today understand, none of this would be possible without a dedicated, small but mighty team. And Alyssa and Jess are administering the Zoom call today, and I'm so grateful for their work in organizing and promoting all the exhibitions and programs that we do here at ROCO. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Jeffrey, Reggie, Kate, Christina, Chris, Emily Gammon, Emily Cook, and everyone else in our extended team at ROCO. I invite all of you on the call today to learn more about our current and future programs on our website, rochestercontemporary.org. All of our exhibitions at ROCO are supported by the New York State Council on the Arts, Monroe County, Farish Foundation, Ann Havens, Richard and Vicki Schwartz, and members like you. We have about 1,000 members as a small organization that is really terrific. And I want to ask all of you to consider joining us and supporting all that we do throughout our year of programming forthcoming. A little housekeeping for today's program. Closed captioning is enabled, as you have seen. If you're having any trouble activating it, please ask in the chat. Additionally, please utilize the chat for any questions. We won't answer them real time, but I will rejoin Cynthia toward the end of the program and serve up a few questions then. By way of a basic introduction, Cynthia Hawkins was born in Queens and received a BA in painting from Queens College, CUNY in 1977, an MFA from Maryland Institute College of Art in 1992, and went on to gain other advanced degrees in museum studies and a PhD in history. She's exhibited widely in New York and beyond, including solo exhibitions at Just Above Midtown in 1981, Queens College Art Center in 1997, Stars in Los Angeles, 2022, and Ortazar projects in New York in 2023, just to name a few. Hawkins' work is in many public collections, including the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Bronx Museum of the Arts, and has received the numerous awards, including the illustrious Helen Frankenthaler Award for Painting just this last year in 2023. And Cynthia is recently joining the roster of artists at Paula Cooper Gallery. So our current exhibition at ROCO brings together sort of a mini survey of paintings and works on paper by Cynthia, alongside, and I think beautifully contrasting with, an extended series of found object sculptures by the Binghamton native and I think underappreciated artist Ronald Gonzalez. And you can read more about his work, of course, and Cynthia's work, again, on our website, rochestercontemporary.org. Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your work at ROCO, for trusting us with your work, and welcome. Please take the mic.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I do love to talk about my work, to share it with everyone. So let's begin. My one thing that I do like people to know is that about the longevity of not just, my painting career, but how, and I think, well, I think you'll be able to see through this, through the exhibition and these slides, about the continuity, the evolving nature of one's career as an artist, or how it can be so connected from, 1975, say, to the present. So I would say that this particular drawing, hieroglyphics, that's what it's short for, Hierog Mark I, and from 1975, is actually the beginning, was a second body of work, and these were only done on paper and graphite, but they began much more simply, mere lines intersecting that were based on a still life of chairs, and they evolved after a couple of months to this more complex drawing that where I started to include, signs and symbols that I acquired through researching more ancient forms of writing, ancient uses of geometry, circles, squares, and the like, and using, linear patterns and lines to move, the eye around the page. And at this point, I was beginning to sort of using the gradations of the graphite was a way of starting to think about color and how to affect the surface of the drawing with different kinds of values. So, yeah, so this is still 1975. So this is by the summer, and I was traveling with my then partner, who was doing summer stock. And so I was doing works on paper, and these are pretty large to be traveling with, being like not in your studio. But so here you can see the transference of some of those mark making that happened in hieroglyph marks onto a painting or work on paper. And this is like oil on paper. And so now you see full-blown color. The use of the linear lines to direct movement is altered significantly here, where the title of this piece, Moving Box, will sort of allude to the fact that that rectangle at the upper right is in motion. And so I think also that the color, as the color moves around the page, it helps one imagine that the rectangle is moving through space, say. And all of those marks and signs and symbols also alluding to movement and which, so I think it all goes together, the color, the mark making, and the rectangle suggests quite a bit of activity and movement, not just across the page from left to right or vice versa, but also in terms of depth. So this is quite a few years later, 2001, and there is this is sort of a period where I've already started to use images I gather from nature, which is sort of like rocks, formations, shapes of rocks, patterns of light, and the like. So, of course, um, one could wonder, the rock shapes are obvious, but the other shapes in the painting, the big white shape and the gray and the sort of pinkish shape, these are all gathered from shapes that I found in the in the land, depressions, shapes of light patterns on the ground. Um, and so I made many drawings of these shapes, and they evolve as needed to and they sort of take up different positions. So, and then I did like the notion of these red circles, ellipses, sort of invading, because I do appreciate some science fiction. So I like astronomy. I'm interested in science in those ways. And but in this case, I thought of the red shapes as invading an invading force, so that they were not, are they, they were dinner guests, uninvited dinner guests. So having some fun with that. Yeah. So, so, okay, I have to, when you, so this currency of meaning was a series of works I did in 1988 and 89, just at the end of my residency at the Studio Museum. I decided that I needed more structure in these paintings. Now, I should tell you that the size on this is 76 by 56 inches, and the first 8, 9, 10 of these were all vertically oriented and that size. So one of the things that you might notice is there's these bands, at least 3 bands of activity across the surface of the painting. So what the middle section is really about is prior to currency of meaning, I was doing like really abstract expressionist painting, no figures, no geometry, just color, manipulating color. And so the middle panel is really it references abstract expressionism. And so I felt in this case that this series of works, I would combine abstract expressionism with this new idea for me of using what I would call organic geometry, not not seeking to make perfect triangles or squares or rectangles, very hand felt, and using the similar mark making that occurred in the drawings for hieroglyph marks and moving box, right? So if you look in the narrow black band on this painting, you see this sort of like calligraphy. So there, with the acquisition of different kinds of signs and symbols, there's also looking at those coming together and acting as a sort of text where there's, a language of sorts. And that will include these sort of writing, but also numbers that can be upside down and backwards. Also segments of geometric shapes. So it all goes together too. And, I don't, plan out the text-based part any more than any other part. This is all about an evolving sort of relationship or discovery with each painting. So yeah, so by 1990, which is only like a year and a half to 2 years later, I began the series Creative Athanasius and the Temple Curtain. So this first painting, you can see it has all the text-based kind of writing at the bottom, and it's more organized as if it is, a written page. And so the three circles represent the Trinity, like most uses of the circular form is, unity, infinity, ideas like that. So in this case, the three of them represent the Trinity. And of course, you have the cross or the X, at the top. And there it continues, and all the little triangles also still, represent the three. So, and then there's some more writing in the red band there. So, I need to tell you that this was the first painting. And then after this, I met a bishop when I was in grad school in Baltimore. I met the Bishop of Baltimore, and it was a high holy day, and he was wearing one of his costumes, but he also had this hat that I was really taken with, which was like a curved triangle. I was really impressed with it. And so after that, I did use that shape for the rest of the series. And yeah, and so so there are quite a few other iterations of this series. Well, I mean, I hope that if you were able to go to this exhibition, I think it was really enjoyable. I was, quite surprised the way the whole curatorial blues curation worked out, that it looks like, for my part, like a mini retrospective. The work here is from 2004 to 2023. So the first two pieces you see on the left are, I call them, one of them has a name, it's called Braided, the top small one's Braided. And the lower one, which is actually based on a Brussels sprout plant, which I found in the supermarket, which I thought was quite astounding as a form. And so I used it for a couple of paintings, and these are from like 2000, I don't know, 2012, I think. And but they are, I like the energy in these, and the way the paint is applied, especially on the lower one. And that it's it still has this like very gestural and organic feel, even though it's not literal and it's not trying to be the Brussels sprout, but the Brussels sprout offers an opportunity to reinvent that shape, that form, to make it allowed to behave differently. So here we have two sets of drawings. The four with the gray frames in the middle are from LaGrange. All right, I was at a residency called the Butterfly House at my good friend's home in LaGrange, Georgia. And so those drawings, I think each one has a particular name, but and I gave the names based on the property and I think sort of like, and the area. And they are humorous. They're casein and I think casein and ink, and they do have a great sense of humor about them. Excuse me. The two drawings on either end, are investigations into what is now my current body of work, which is called Maps Necessary for Walk 4D. So the story the story with that is I had planned to do this project, the series, and call it a Maps Necessary for a Walk in 4D. And I was going to use stick maps, which are maps made with sticks and cowrie shells by the Marshall Islanders. And it's for navigating the Pacific Ocean and getting from one island to the other. And so it turns out that the way it worked is there was a navigator who memorizes the map. The map does not go in the boat. The navigator essentially lays in the boat, and the way that navigation occurs is by the wind blowing the water, at night, obviously stars, but the navigator also navigates by bodily movement. So he feels the wave movement, the action, and can tell where they are. It can tell if there's coral under the water, if an island is nearby. So it's really fascinating how human beings manage to create these ways of navigating and inventing this whole process, which even today, oceanographers, researchers have begun working with there's a few navigators left, and they work together to understand the ocean. And so these were the one on the left is a really early one. So they're broken up into the drawings I did in my studio before I went on vacation last July, and then some that I did when I was away, which I called a working holiday. And I ended up happily having created 14 new works on paper. So these two were done in July in Normandy, and they are casein and watercolor crayon carandache. And so these are the ones that are much more developed, and so still, working out how these new paintings are going to happen. And I have to say that the new paintings are not really like this, but they are like this. So, and these are all like, what are these, 30 by 20 inches, and they're extremely energetic, aren't they? Okay, here we have the two pieces on the paintings on the left and the right are from 2004, and they're from a series called Clusters. And each painting has a particular name for a particular stellar cluster. And sometimes, the name is sort of invented. The cluster is actual, but as painters do, we like sort of manipulate not only that which we see, or yes, but also like the relationship between things. So the one on the painting on the right is called Cephas, and there's three clusters with the same name or similar name. And so I felt like one of the things I did in that series was move everything together. And and some of the shapes are based on the parts of the cluster. But then, of course, everything is invented, right? The relationships, the distances, the color, and so that they have, uh, these ideas have their own, sort of life. And the painting on the left with the yellow form and it has that black square, that is a window onto a distant part of the galaxy. So so there is a cluster that's yellow, the blue, and the colored circles around it are suns, and one of them is our sun, but then there's its relationship to other bodies. Yeah, so being an abstract painter, I have to say that I never made a really political painting. I mean, I don't think that, the abstraction registers uh as, social activism. But I did in this case. I'd like you all to know that Barbara Hoffman let me use one of her spaces that summer. Was it 2021, I think? And this painting was done there, and it was also obviously during the um episode with George Floyd. So, and that's the title of this is one of the few I always remember, and it's an oxygen in parentheses for Floyd. So and so these, what are these shapes? These are oxygen molecules, and it's a very simple molecule. And so, of course, I had to, really figure out how to make it active and energetic and meaningful. And uh, so I hope that it's read that way. So, all right, the green work on paper down the middle is, can you go back? The green work on paper is one of like 17 works called Signs of Civilization. And it's based on sort of land formations and bodies of water that you can see from 30,000 feet when you're in a plane near the window. And so I would make these small sketches and then later, put them together, and they would evolve into these I think, interesting compositions that also sort of were linked to the cluster series, right? And so, and that is kind of interesting. All right, these two are also from Remoulade on Peche, which was where I stayed last July. So I did 7 small, small casein on paper and 7 large pieces that were much more complicated. So it's as you can see, it's really like the paint part, the background part is like highly gestural. And then the map making part of these works are the linear parts. Okay, so I didn't tell you the rest of the map making story. So I was going to use the stick maps, but then I found my drawings from 1979 for a sculpture, a relief sculpture I made, um, called A Walk in 4D. And so then I decided to use those drawings as my maps. And there are about eight of these drawings. And so, but what I also realized is that the drawings can be read. I can read them frontally the way I drew them, or backwards, upside down. And so so each one of them offers like 4 or 5 different ways to use the map on the works. So these are also from the cluster series. And again, you could see the square on the painting on the left is a window to another galaxy. And one of the, I would say, I'll just say interesting things that I tend to do is like contain, some objects, and then also allow a piece or one of them to sort of like escape the frame. So here in that one, you have like 6 small worlds in that gold square, and then there's one to the right that sort of escapes the space. And And this one is really, there's something really seductive about the way I ended up painting these sort of circular forms, uh, and overlapping the color and changing it. And yeah, so that's, I mean, it's a very, I think, kind of simple, um, composition, but it's the way in which the paint is handled that really makes it interesting. And the one next to it, yeah, I like the grid, the way the grid ended up being used, sort of like it feels like plaid or something. But again, these are all referencing different stellar clusters and bodies, suns, from different parts of the galaxy. Well, so this exhibition was very nice. I have to say it was unexpected. Thank you. Thank you, Blue. And I do want you to know that Ronald Gonzalez, I worked with him when I was a gallery director at SUNY Geneseo and knew his work uh from then. And I did a solo show with him there and a drawing. He was in a drawing show that I curated. So I was very happy to be sharing space with him because, yeah, I really like, you know, his method of making sculpture. So thank you for that, Blue. So since so other than the new maps necessary for walking 40, those works on paper. Um in 2019, I uh donated 6 paintings to Kenkelba House Museum. Well, it was Kenkelba House then. And because I had like 6 paintings that were 76 by 56 and up from the currency of meaning and the abstract expressionist paintings that I did immediately before, while I was in residence at the Studio Museum. And this particular canvas was an unfinished canvas. It had hardly anything on it. So, I mean, it really um, piqued my interest because, prior to this, the recent years, the years before this, I was either working on paper or making small works, 24 by 24 and the like. And, at one point I decided I just did not enjoy making small paintings. Besides, a small painting takes as much effort as a big painting. That's for sure. So anyway, so I took this canvas and I created this, the other side of the Aquila Rift. Now I have to be totally clear. The title for this painting that wasn't anywhere near begun, barely begun, was The Other Side of the Aquila Rift. So I kept the title for this. And I have to say the first thing when I work in like really like layers. In that I put, stuffed it down, and usually it all changes. And sometimes there's objects in that composition as it's evolving that I really like. And if I really like it, I keep it no matter what. So, and those wrapped shapes at the bottom were the ones that really I built the rest of the painting around. So here, not gravity. So of course, so I'm going to tell you that I made these big paintings in this very small room that I use as an office. This one is 96 by 48. So it is the reason that there's paint on the ceiling. And it's two canvases together. And so one of the why it's called Not Gravity is because I really wanted to feel the shapes, feel as though the shapes were like flinging up to the ceiling, up to the top of the canvas. And that's why there's so many small shapes up there, and the others below are moving upward towards it. But they're also, um rings, I'll call it rings, like shapes that have, no color inside. But I really, yeah. And some of these at the bottom, the big red one, and this red and half blue one. I mean, they evolved too, because they weren't like that, but I kept changing some aspects of them. And I do like that title, Not Gravity, to give you to give the sense that, there was this upward thrust in the painting. So I would say that since 2019, and even some parts of 2012, the work that I was doing was sort of like individual pieces, sort of, which I decided to call like sort of meandering. But generally I do like to work with a title that is just a marker for the work that I'm doing. So the title is a vehicle to make paintings, and like the paintings may or may not. I mean, each one, they're all part of this body, which is that title, but anything can happen in the course of producing that series. So this is the first to arrive, number 3. And so you all remember the asteroid Oumuamua that was flew by back in 2021. And so this is a combination of us thinking about this asteroid and the dawn to dusk lights on my garage, which were, I found, when I would look out the window, I would imagine different things from seeing these giant lights. And so I incorporated them into the paintings. And so, but and there were, I think, 3 or 4, and this one was the biggest one, 60 by 96, which was lots of fun. And also what's I find, interesting about it too is that orange, this sort of burnt orange kind of color. And of course, I have to say that there are many variations within that orange, with red and yellow and all kinds of other harmonious kind of mixtures. So this is, as you can see, Gwen for Soup and the Proximity of Matter, which is a series of 10 paintings that came about because a family friend in Wales posted a photograph that turned out to be a bowl of soup. And it was this incredible color, similar to that sort of orange of First to Arrive you just saw. And so I just, I became quite enamored of the photograph, and I didn't know it was soup until he told me, but I still was excited by it. So I did 10 paintings, called this Gwen for Soup because of the square, and his photograph was a square. And so, but so you couldn't tell it was a bowl of soup. It looked like an abstract painting. And the proximity of matter is there because I found a drawing I did in the late 70s, early 80s called, and it turned out to have a title on the bottom, Proximity of Matter. It was a small drawing with rocks covering the surface, top to bottom. And so I used, so from the photograph of the soup, there's all these little globules of fat, and I used some of those to make the shapes that appear in the painting. Now, what's really interesting right here is that you can't really, I didn't use it the same way in this one, but what was really interesting in the course of those in the course of the series was all this, I started doing all this using tape to include this sort of, I guess it's sort of a graphic element, but on the other hand, what it does is if it allows for a certain amount of erasure of what's on top. So I would put the tape down, and then I would paint on top of it over the whole area, and then but there was already a painting begun underneath the tape. So then when you take the tape off, then you have this like very interesting um kind of color compositions and linear compositions that are not, anything you can plan on. So, and that's always a good thing. So, but you can see in here also, if you noticed in First Horizon 3, there are these little flying doodads because they're not horses, they're not animals, they're not anything. They're a sort of graphic element that I pulled out of another painting, but they fly around, and they're sort of fun. So, but yeah, so you can see how every body of work gives me new elements to use further down the line. So, and what I call my bag of tricks. So this is the very first walk in 4D painting from I don't know, early 23, spring 23, I guess. And what's interesting about it to me is that, the color, the character of the color, and it was much lighter than I had been using. And but this was the first one, and you can see that there is still the use of the a kind of graphic element of the tape is in there. You can see the floating sort of ellipses and circles at the top, and then the last bit that goes on is the map. And it really complicates the composition really I mean really nicely. And so that there the map is on the surface, but there is coming a day when the map will move through the surface. So, yeah, so that is, and I really love doing these, and it's really interesting how they've evolved. I'm sorry that you I think there's one more, and from the show exhibition in LA from this past February, and you can see how much they've evolved. Yeah, this is number 6, and you can see how they have evolved. There's also, I used to do like this sort of transparency and overlapping of color in this kind of transparent kind of way. No, this was happened during the course of making these paintings. And the use of the tape is also quite different, and it's evolving, as all things should, right? And yes, very interesting. So, and this one, what is this? This is 45 by 55, and there are others that are 70 by 60, and offer. So you can see this color is not so different from the previous one, but lately they've become like deeper, sort of deeper colors. And it evolves, it goes back and forth. All right.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We're going to stick on this full screen view in case we want to go back and look at any of the images in detail to answer any questions. And I want to remind anyone who's on the call, if they have a question, please toss it into the chat. And I'd like to just queue up one or two first, and we'll see what we get in the chat. First, I just want to thank you again for trusting us with your work. I just love seeing those installation shots, which look so great. Again, props to Alyssa and Jess for the photographing of the exhibition. Those look really terrific. And encourage everybody to come and see the show. And I just love hearing you talk about abstraction. It was great to visit you in the studio and get this program, set in motion a few months back when we were doing that. And I love hearing you today. But I wonder if you could add a little more context and a little more texture to the way you use and the way you think about color. And if you want us to click back through the slideshow and land on a certain image to illustrate this point, just tell us.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to take away from the way I use color is that I'm very conscious of complements. And while they don't need to be literal same value or anything, and I use complements to activate edges. I mean, let's look at First to Arrive 3, that double, because it's so orange, but there is yeah, so on this one there, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but orange and blue are complements. And so around, and some of these areas, these shapes that you think are white are not white. They are very pale blues or purples. And around their edges, there is either generally a very slight complement for that main body's color, but it can be, it's not going to match it in hue. It is just going to give it this pop to move it up from the surface. So I very much use complements in, and I have to say, it's not like, oh, it's something that I do and I think about, and but I've been using it that way for a long time. And actually, I was I took my color class with a friend of mine who was in grad school where I was in undergrad, and I remember it very well, and it was a real eye opener to like begin to think about color in that way, and warmth, cool, and certainly, I mean, I remember a time when I used to try to make like variations on gray with complements, and there's a lot of opportunity in, you know, using color that way to really activate the surface of your paintings.
Could we flip to the main exhibition wall, the tall wall at the end? Yes, back. Yes, there. Yep. So Cynthia, how do you begin? What's your studio practice? What's your process like in beginning and working through, for example, one of these two? Wonder if you could speak a little bit more about.
All right, well, for this entire series, I did like weeks and weeks of ink drawings for shapes, and and uh so it's not just drawing the shape, but placing like the proximity of one shape to another. Then I did a lot of casing. um I hesitate to call them studies. I don't know what they are. It's like drawing like little paintings on paper, but they were all about like, you know, placing what kind of color background, but I didn't think of it literally. It's just like it's sort of like fishing. Yeah, it's sort of like fishing to see like how to make a composition with just these like really minimal shapes. Basically the circles, and you can see in my work from the beginning, almost the beginning, especially since natural things, which you don't have an example of here, since the 90s, these shapes keep showing up over and over again. But is it the shape? It's how you use it, how you place it, what you use with it. So like this painting on the left, what is that? No, it's the right. These are not complicated shapes, right? But what they have, their complexity is in the color and the use of the grid, and the proximity of things, and how you make, you know, when let's say a group of shapes are orienting towards the left or the right, you do something that moves in opposition to that, right? To provide some kind of tension. But I have to say that I don't plan anything. I just work at it. I make these drawings, I do some casing, and just do a lot of them. And it's very gestural. And then I guess at some point, when I, you know, start doing the paintings, and when is that? That's, it's like arbitrary, so, but and I don't use a drawing to draw the painting. It's like, I call it packing my head. Like when I was in grad school, it's like you have um these exams, comprehensive exam as a PhD, right? So, and then they want you to So they write this big paper and whatever. And I do the same thing with that. It's like I pack my head with the stuff, and then I can, formulate. And I think everybody does that. It's called research, I think. But yeah, but I don't make drawings. I don't make a plan. It evolves. It's certainly, and you've heard this from other painters and artists, is that there's like a give and take. It's just like, call and response. That is, people know that for jazz, but it's the same thing.
And the use of the grid in this instance, there are 3 or 4, I believe we have 4 pieces that overtly use the grid. Do you have anything to say about that in particular?
Well, I think I've been using the grid since the 80s. So, and is it about the grid? The grid is provides an opportunity, to have form that is in opposition to the whole, composition. Like I used to my painting was very expressionistic, right? With very little form. But then when I started to use a grid, the grid was there, but most of it got covered over, as the painting went on. So there was only left this little hint through that you could see through that also gave you depth, right? So all of these things are opportunities to uh, have your content, your composition work in some cases together, in opposition. You want to create some excitement, some tension, and you do that with those forms that you carry around with you, hopefully. I mean, that's what I do. And then, like even like in these 2 paintings, there are real like figurative painting conventions are in these 2 paintings, right? Cast shadows, all kinds of stuff like that, where then there's like, here's a circle, it's this color, but you know what? It's passing over this thing. So maybe it should be another color. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, so those conventions you use in still life painting and figurative painting about how to give your composition like depth and 3-dimensionality are used sometimes here. I mean, in these paintings for sure, so in the new work, not so much. But sometimes, if you have a area that's really big, you don't want it to be, so how can you activate that? You don't want it to be really flat. So then what do? I don't know, maybe you cast a shadow there. Maybe you, mix up the color so that even though there is no cast shadow, something is happening on there, so
So Stephen just commented, I'm not sure if
yeah,
you
it's really.
can you see that, Cynthia? Can you see Stephen's comment?
No, I
I
didn't.
tend to agree. He said,
Where's that?
it's mysterious to look through to the grid itself. There's something about the grid being in the background. I think that's what I find striking about this piece and the other 2 that use the grid. I enjoyed that comment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mean, the thing really is like, it's not like you plan it, right? It's like you notice something, and especially on this one on the right, I can see what you're talking about. And it is but it's outer space. This is happening in my mind. Painting is taking place in the cosmos, and anything can happen. So
And Brussels
thanks,
sprouts.
Stephen. Right, Brussels. I
Brussels
mean,
sprouts.
really, it's, I have said this to others before that I really want, whatever kind of, say, object I use, a rock, a Brussels sprout, whatever, that it should become other than itself. I want to make it do something else, and that is the case across the board for me.
Well, I want to just quote you once more here. In the videos that we produced in conjunction with this exhibition, we made two in-studio interview videos with you and one with Ronald. And in yours, I believe we lead in with a quote, a little clip of you saying that you're married to abstraction. Um,
Yep.
and I think that's a powerful way to lead off. And for many of our viewers to sort of get to know you after walking through the space and seeing some of your works, to hear you say that first off seems particularly apt in light of this conversation. Also want to shout out Darian Lehman, who produced those videos. I think Darian may have been on the call. Terrific videographer, did a great job with those. Thanks, Darian. Cynthia, maybe I don't see any other questions in here. But would you like to give us a quick primer on what you're up to next and where people can, find you and any upcoming shows that you have committed at this stage?
So right now I am finishing up a couple of paintings for a show in Milan at Kaufman Repetto, who also, the gallery has a site, space in Manhattan, but my show will be in Milan on opening 6. And hopefully, so the next show after that will be in the spring of next spring, 25, March 25. I'll be doing a show with Paula Cooper Gallery in Chelsea. And in October, following October 25, there's only one of me. I'll be showing some work at Hollybush Gardens in London. And so hopefully we'll be circling back around to, we'll be in New York, and then, that's enough for me for now. I mean,
Well,
but I'm
that's
looking
huge.
forward to it. Yeah, it's all like this. Yeah, it's a lot. And so, but, so instead of working 10 hours a day, I work 6 days a week. So,
Well, I want to
but it's,
congratulate you again on all your recent success, having worked in a group show at MoMA, New Gallery, and a bunch of other exhibitions. Also want to shout out Stars in LA for helping us with this exhibition here. Anyone can visit their website and learn more about their programs. It sounds as though Lawrence would like to ask a question, and we're going to unmute Lawrence and see if we can do that. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, my basic question was about space and whether space is pushing through your paintings or pushing through you into your painting.
well, that's a good question, because I didn't even say that, but I am very conscious of the spatial depth that happens in the painting. So recently, since like 2019, there's been a bit really much an opening up into the paint, into the compositions, where the space is not merely on, surface, but goes much deeper into the canvas, which is, I think, something that really. I can only say evolved. And I think there was two things that aided that is the transparency, using the paint in a more transparent manner, translucent manner rather. And then, because at one point in Gwen for Soup series, I started to think like making invisible shapes. And
Yeah.
and that's where I got to the sort of very translucent shapes where there was like a skin of color just over a shape. But that also lets you have series of objects behind and in front that deepens the spatial depth of the painting. Thanks for that, Lawrence. Yeah, that was a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real pulsation. It's just like boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom throughout the pieces that you do. It's really never seen that up close before. So the question comes jumping out of my mouth like that. Thank you very much for taking time to answer.
Sure.
Thanks, Lawrence. Would anyone else like to propose a question for Cynthia? Any other comments or thoughts? Yes, this video will be recorded. We'll do a slight edit and hopefully have it up on our website within 2 days. And so watch our future emails and you'll get a link to this recording. Again, watch the in-studio interviews with both Cynthia and Ronald. And all that can be found on rochestercontemporary.org. And also, if you don't already, follow us on Instagram. And I think we'll paste a link to that in the chat as well. Cynthia, do you have any parting words for us?
Yeah,
And we will.
I would like to thank you for moving me to do this exhibition. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody who's come to the talk. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Thank you so much. And all of you who attended the opening on March 1st, that was terrific. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for being here again. Thank you, Cynthia. We'll see you at the gallery soon. Have a great night, everyone.
Yes, thanks. Bye.